So we've got some good movie people.
So hi, I'm Robert Palmer. I'm Chief Analyst with BPO Media. For those of you who don't know BPO Media, I put some copies of publications on the table for you. We published a couple of magazines, the Imaging Channel and Workflow Magazine, and then I head up our BPO research side of the house. So we do proprietary contract work, market research, consulting, that kind of thing. So that's me. Did you need me to talk about seat billing too, or?
Still ask the question.
Doug Johnson, Red Sage Group.
Greg Walters. I'm currently with a bar up in Wisconsin, helping them build out a print management and content practice, as well as, and I'd like to talk about this when we get a chance, as well as helping them institutionalize their existing practices, which include everything the IT guys do. Enterprise, end user, help desk, patient portal, and all those kinds of things. So it's really interesting coming out of print and then being asked to apply the principles in MPS into different verticals.
Brian Stevenson, formerly the president of Laser Networks before that managed print company was sold to Xerox about 4 years ago. Since then I've worked, I have my business called Footprint. Most of my time is spent with a large cooperative called Trimega, and underneath that there's a technology group and a large managed print services consortium that I head up. They're just large independents across the U.S. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation around seat-based billing.
Hey, so Ken Stewart, most of my time is spent being a VP at Teaser Group, heading up their market intelligence group, which really focuses on primary research and market forecasts, all the fun stuff you really wake up in the morning and want to hear about. And then I do a little bit of moonlighting from time to time with my small consulting firm, Change Force, so I have some fun with that, helping out dealers and actually end user customers as well. So.
My name is Greg Briscoe, and I'm a regional manager with a company called Dove Data Products. Really, I'm just an old school sales guy is what I am. I've been in this industry about 11, 12 years. I started out with Icon, as a lot of us did, so I'm finding out. I'm responsible for all of our MPS offerings throughout the country with Dove, and truthfully, I'm a student of MPS. I mean, I think it changes every single day, and that's the interesting part. That's the awesome part about this whole conference, is to be a part of that change.
All right, so the first question I'm going to put out to you guys, who wants to talk about the pros of seat-based billing as they see it? Anyone want to volunteer first?
Yeah.
All right, here's Doug.
I'm actually a fan of this. I think there's a lot to do to make it happen, but let me tell you what I like about seat-based pricing. First, if you look at what's happened with managed print in this industry over the last few years, it seems like most people are at the fourth decimal in competition, right? And I could argue a lot of reasons why we kind of let ourselves devolve into a commodity version of managed print, which is kind of what it's become, right? When you start looking at seat-based pricing, the game changes. When you look at the market basket cost of printing on a per seat or per user basis versus other seat-based things they buy, printing is really inexpensive, right? You compare to help desk, compared to any other seat-based or user-based pricing model that a typical IT manager would buy, printing's pretty cheap when you put it in that market basket. Oh, and by the way, they're not at the fourth decimal. They're usually the closest dollar or the closest 50 cents. That's the first thing. Second thing I like about it is it allows you to start to blend other things into the cost much easier, right? Today you basically have, for hopefully all of you, you got toner and break-fix service. Hopefully some of you are also blending in all the hardware. But that's and maybe a couple services here or there, that's what you've got, right? You move into seat-based pricing, now you've got maybe some document workflow software, there's apps, so there's other things that help improve the way documents and content moves through an environment. Now you have a format to slide that stuff in. It gives you a differentiable advantage. It also, and I'm not saying this is all easy to do, but it gives you that capability, and it allows you to differentiate yourself from other competitors, right? So today, it's like, you're 01, 04, blah, 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 can you beat it? In this kind of a model, you could be at $14.25, and someone else comes in, they don't know what's in that mix. So over time, as printing declines, the percent of your cost that is hardware, toner, and break fix service, as a percentage of that seat might decline, and this percent that goes up that's software, workflow, services, analytics can go up, but you've now got a forum or a pathway into that customer's environment with that type of pricing model. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's great. I just want to dovetail off that, as I think that's an excellent point. I mean, for a long time, what we've been talking about is advocating that the value proposition of MPS needs to be extended. And that's what seat-based billing gives you an opportunity to do. So to the extent that you're selling MPS and your whole value proposition is built on cost, you're in a very vulnerable position. You can't differentiate from your competition. And so that's why we like seat-based billing, because it's an opportunity to extend the value proposition of MPS, fold other things in there in terms of the services that you provide, whether that's workflow services, whether that's document solutions, whatever. The seat-based billing model allows you to kind of add value and add differentiation, and that's, I think, the key advantage.
I can just add one too quickly. Sorry, it's just interesting that we're always obviously talking about the benefits to us in our industry, and sometimes we have to think about the benefit to the customer as well, right? And in our world, managed print, somehow we've convinced the customers they need to accept and live with variable cost. Yet if you look at any organization, any Fortune company, etc., they want predictability and cost for everything that goes into an employee. So they know exactly how much it costs for hydro per person. They know exactly how much it costs for their HR costs. They know exactly how much it costs for their finance costs, etc. They've actually got a dollar amount that they peg to that, with the exception of print. So that budgetability factor, and we've spoken with a lot of IT managers, and once they have that number and it's budgetable, that's the key, budgetable, that's a huge benefit for, for the end user as well, right?
And let me add one more thing, maybe this is the most obvious, but it reduces the dissonance you have today with your customer. Today, you make money when your customer prints. So while you all put the little thing at the bottom of your email that says, please consider the environment before printing, none of you want that to happen, right? So the reality is when you move to a seat-based pricing model, you think you can start to now put rules in place, use the end user data side of the equation that we all talk about but no one executes? Absolutely, right? Because now it's a seat-based model. Now you're not hoping the customer prints more, you're actually hoping the customer prints less because it lowers your cost basis, right? So that's one of the other things, if you think about our industry in the last 15 years, we don't want our customers to print less. We say we do, but the minute they do, everybody freaks out because you're now going to get paid less. This kind of a model not only allows you to, like I said, blend those other things in, but it removes the dissonance between you telling the customer you're there to do the best thing for them, which might actually be to help them print less. Because you don't want that to happen, because your model, you only make money when there's file print, right?
So what I'm a fan of it too, and it probably comes out of where I started in MPS was on the IT side. So everything over there is done by seat or license, right? So you're gonna upgrade licenses, you're gonna renew licenses and things like that. But when they started to think about calculating how the heck I'm gonna bill per seat, because everyone's in the room thinking, all right, well, how am I gonna manage my costs? Where's my risk? If I assume that every user is gonna print 2,500 a month or a week or whatever that math number is, I've gotta be comfortable that there's gonna be some that go over or that go under. And then you've gotta also measure, well, if I'm gonna do it on an employee, okay, when they start laying off, where does that affect me? All right, then I've gotta segregate what type of employee. It's not gonna be the guys out on the floor in the manufacturing setting, it's gonna be the office workers, okay? All right, what about a heavy color user or a heavy printer, an accounting? Where do you stop? Or do you stop? So all these things go through my mind as I'm trying to calculate this out. And then, honestly, our engine has been CPC since the beginning. So we can't, I don't know how we can really affect that change without someone at the OEM level or something else happening. Because we're gonna assume all that risk. But I think it's I believe it's a good model.
Can I talk to that risk for a second?
In a second.
Yeah, it's gotta go this way.
Get over here. Another thing about the seat-based thing is that, okay, we're talking as it supplies to the channel, but what prevents an OEM putting this together for a direct play?
Right.
All right, and so maybe we want to get on that and play in that field right away. And that's where we were talking about Epson earlier. The disruption that's going to come with something like that isn't MPS disrupting the world. It's that disrupting MPS. Because as I was saying, is if I'm not an MPS provider, and I've got a customer who wants MPS, wants 2,000 machines, and I really don't care about because I don't have revenue streams, I don't have any cost or I'm not supporting a service department on all the clicks. I don't have that right now. So I'm outside the MPS play. I'd sell 2,000 of those things, take the margin transactionally, and never worry about it. So there's my disruption into the MPS environment. So maybe become looking at seat-based and subscription-based and license-based, it might end up being a move for survival, I guess. But I guess the hardest thing is that the industry's been this way since the very beginning. Do we change it, or does someone else have to come out with something bigger and we get on that bandwagon?
So I've never in my life heard Greg Walters talk about risk. Ever. This guy is a contrarian. You want to talk about way out there? Greg is the guy that's looking 2025. Never heard him talk like that. So with Wes and I having a few pops a few years ago talking about this, it came around because, quite honestly, we were really pissed off with we were really disappointed with the number of managed print programs being launched by OEMs and them saying, hey, we have an MPS program, hey, we have an MPS program. They have no idea what that was. They didn't know what it took to really provide the level of service and level of support. Doug Johnson made a great point. Now all of a sudden it's been commoditized. That was absolutely, my view, absolutely a drive of the OEMs was to commoditize this thing out so they could immediately compete. Next thing I know, Xerox is being named in the top quadrant. I'm like, really? So it just frustrated me to no end that we had to just change the game. And by going to seat-based pricing, it does change the game. I found that a lot of the dealers that I work with now, and there's some fantastic dealers, many of them, some in this room too, and it's been so great. But they've had trouble growing their revenues. And I don't know if you guys have had this, but they've had trouble growing revenue because now managed print has been seeded. And they're saying, oh, we have a managed print program with Ricoh, or we have a managed print program with Canon, or with Xerox, or with HP, or Lexmark, or somebody. And it's like, it's not really a great program, but they're not going to change. And that was kind of we couldn't get them to change. They couldn't come to my program, or our program, or the dealer's program. But what I did find was that the client was willing to progress to a new vendor. And if you change the light and you say, hey, this wraps in a way that you understand, we're completely aligned in terms of what our mission is around maximizing uptime. So the 5 nines world of IT, now we're talking at least 2 nines. We're talking about print reduction, we're talking about everything that relates to the CIO. Now you've completely changed the map, and Ricoh and Canon and Xerox and everyone else who's still paid by the box is going to have a really hard time selling by the seat. And I just thought that might give us a couple of years of separation and allow us to grow again. So and I think those things are still relevant.
Sorry for swearing.
All that swearing should go back to the Marine Corps. So I want to ask a question. How many of you in here have actually sat across the table and bought a contract from a company that you now represent? Any end users in here all? So that's where I came from. So I came from the IT industry as a buyer, and I was recruited by a firm that asked me to help them legitimize their offering to IT buyers. And so it was an interest to me to enter an industry that I really didn't care much about from a printer standpoint, from a technology standpoint, that I thought I could make a difference in. And so when I start hearing about things like seat-based billing, it becomes intriguing to me. Why is that? Well, because of the fact that what it begins to do is it finally aligns the provider with my interests as a customer. It basically says that you can have a legitimate conversation with me now, that I've sat across the table from you and negotiated with you, and I've consulted with several Fortune 500 companies, especially small companies alike, that the common first thing they say to me is, can you help me make sense of this contract that is sitting in front of me? I have no clue what these guys are trying to push on me. And so it finally, not that necessarily seat-based billing is the end-all be-all to that solution, but in today's information, we don't necessarily have to worry about printing less pages. Yes, that may happen at some point, but the idea really is that we need to be able to deal with information because that's the currency on which the page coming out of the machine has information on it. It's conveyed around the organization. And the only reason that customers are looking really to print less is to help them harness the information faster. So what you may find by ceasing your focus on the ever-loving price per page is that you may find that your customer actually values information. And by looking at what they value, you begin to understand how their business works. And then you can begin to see new value sources, which then translate to new money and revenue streams for you. That's a simple equation. It's hard to do, and I'm not underscoring that, but I want you to understand that you have the power to change the world, not just sell a piece of technology. So I urge you to consider from that perspective.
I think the reality of the situation is that we've already been down this road, right? So before cost per page became standard and mainstream, we were all talking about there's risk involved. And true, to your point, there's definitely risk involved in seat-based billing. I mean, your assessments become more important. You have to make sure that they're dead on accurate, but we've been down this road. So before you take a step forward, I would say evaluate what step you just took. If we've made the change before, we went down that path, we've understood what the issues, the problems, the concerns were, and we figured it out. There's nothing different between going from a transactional model to a cost per page model as there is from going from a cost per page model to a seat-based model. And the harsh reality is what other alternative do we have? I mean, we know, as you just said, down 4 decimals to negotiate a contract. I mean, we can't sustain, it's not a sustainable long-term business model. So what else do we do? Maybe seat-based billing is the best thing since sliced bread, maybe it's not, but at least it gives us a strategy